Hello, I'm John Michael Chambers, and welcome to Intel and Insights with Juan 07, published every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Juan has been serving this nation since the time of Ronald Reagan. He is very well connected, and I'll leave it at that. His clandestine assignments and self-imposed directives, many which are unknown to the public, play a critical role in protecting this nation and its interests for decades. A good friend and most valuable voice and resource for the new media. Thank you, Juan, for talking with me and our audience today.
Hey, beautiful to get a chance to visit with you again there, John. So
Good to see you. Careful driving, folks. Pardon me, and perhaps Juan, bronchitis seems to be spreading. If I'm clearing my throat a few times, pardon me. Look, folks listening, this will be a very brief report addressing Alex Jones's InfoWars process, according to Alex and to reports I'm getting, of being taken down. To the Scott Ritter and Judge Andrew Napolitano's passports being pulled by the US State Department, and of course the rumblings of pulling us into war with Russia, all off the cusp of 34 convictions against President Donald Trump and the $200 million, according to Eric Trump, in support of the president, having been raised in just the past couple of days. So please, Juan, get us up to speed on these three recent and any recent unfolding events that I consider to be of an urgent matter as the chessboard acceleration is moving forward. What can we expect now and in the next dangerous phase of this war?
well, it is accelerating. You can feel it coming every day. I've sent out the video with Phil Collins a few times over the years. I can feel it coming in the night. And Dan Scavino sent out one of the concert versions last night, and so that is really almost universal. I just got something from folks over in England, and a huge rally of people in England with the theme that Donald Trump has to be brought back into office. This next election is about way more than just the fate of America, but the whole world is hanging in the balance, which is really true. So many of the events occurring around the world would arguably never have reached this level, such as being on the verge of nuclear war in Central Europe. Absolutely, it's hard to imagine that in any scenario Trump would have allowed that to escalate the way that it has. With the situation with Scott Ritter and Andrew Napolitano, they were en route to Russia. Of course, Tucker'd been over there. One of the folks that we know, Scott Bennett, had been over there a couple of times, and Russia has allowed some of these Western representatives to come over and meet with various officials. The question is, would what Scott Ritter and Andrew Napolitano have gone over to do amounted to some type of backdoor negotiations, or you can't do diplomatic relations type things without under the auspices of representing folks in our government, without State Department and federal approval. And so if they did not have that approval and were going over, then it would be proper protocol to intercept it. However, behind the scenes, we've always had people that have done meetings between the leadership of countries on the fly backdoor, on behalf of leaders. President Kennedy famously had backdoor contacts into Cuba and to who helped with negotiations, and he personally approved it, and therefore it wouldn't have been illegal. It was without the State Department's knowledge or involvement. Even Brezhnev and Kennedy both had commented privately that they were concerned about the generals around them, and therefore they contacted the general because they couldn't work out some kind of an agreement towards peace with the generals involved. They were anti-peace. They wanted to both, throttle each other. So with that in mind, the only part of this trip that's probably really obviously potentially wrong is that if there was some type of a desire and intent on both sides, normally we go to some other nation, some meeting event, etc., even privately, and do a little comparing of notes and see if we can get some kind of understanding. The other side of the coin is those are very dangerous because if you have not got official cover, for example, from the president, then you get caught, and all of a sudden you have interfered in national affairs potentially, and so that could be a criminal act. So whatever Napolitano and Ritter were up to, we'll just have to wait and see. I suspect that my gut instinct is it was probably not well advised the manner in which they were going to do it, but hard to say. We'll wait to know the details. I know nothing of the specifics of it, so it's just virtually impossible to have a comment beyond same knowledge and the background of other events like this going on all the time.
Well, thanks for sharing that, especially going back to the Kennedy example. Something I've just learned here about the protocols for independent journalists. But, the way I was looking at it, and clearly, as you stated, we'll see how this plays out. But, I see with the Alex Jones announcements of his show being pulled down, the convictions against President Trump, the taking of the passports of 2 journalists. Some common denominator that I find in this is silencing the opposition seems to be escalating. Would you think there's some of that taking place too? Is that just a Chambers interjection?
Well, it's hard to throw the Alex Jones thing into the same mix. I know people would like to. Alex would certainly like to, but if I understand it correctly, this is related to the Sandy Hook case where the families sued Alex Jones for causing them stress and drama and all that, supposedly over the false flag issue, and whether or not Sandy Hook was in fact a false flag, which I'll just go on record, it was a false flag. Okay, that's the way it was. But that's my personal opinion. I think the data, the documentation out there, for me, is very conclusive. But we may not know the full truth on that until we get the truth on 9/11 and all the way back to Kennedy assassination. And Trump has promised to make all of that public before this is over.
Yes, thanks, Juan. I'm glad you brought us back to JFK because that's the big one. They're all big, but that's what kicked this off. That's when the soul is ripped out of America and the end of the innocence, if you will. But, I want to make a comment. Alex Jones, a good friend of mine, Dr. Kirk Elliott, the economist, has been a guest on Alex Jones as of recent, and Kirk and I speak weekly, and he's whispered in my ear, but Alex Jones is saying it on his shows, making announcements right now that he could be unplugged at any day at this time. He's announced his staff, his team, and so forth, contingencies for working for him over the years. But it seems to me that they're getting very, very close. Some online chatter was that they had a difficult time logging on today. I didn't get a chance to check it out myself, but we know that's coming. We see it's coming. And as you stated, that's, the initial attack on AJ was the Sandy Hook issue where they bankrupted him and so forth and so on, and made things difficult. But, I worked with Judge Napolitano briefly many years ago, I think back in 2009, when I had formed the Save America Foundation, a 501c4 in Florida. And we had, the judge was our keynote speaker opening night. It's a 3-day event in Tampa, Florida. And it was interesting. We had G. Edward Griffin as a speaker as well, who spoke about the Federal Reserve and collectivism and individualism. But I was able to reintroduce the two of them together, and they had some interesting conversations. But anyway, here we are, for whatever reason, and
Well,
you've
and by
indicated.
the way, Edward is the national treasure, and
Oh, without question.
but he just and he's stayed viable all the way through. Last time I saw him about a year and a half ago, he seemed just as clear as a bell and sharp as a tack, and so
Mhm.
a super friend of the country, so that world really.
You bet. All right, so we also have talk a little bit about Russia. I mean, that's why they went over there on Napolitano, right? And Ritter. Uh,
Well,
what's happening right
let
now?
me come to that one second. Let me just say this about the situation, Alex Jones. I don't think that you can attribute this directly to the Fed taking down Alex or a government thing. There's a judgment in the case.
Okay.
They have a legal right based on that judgment to go after assets, and so they've gone through the process to identify assets and seize the assets. And it's a horrible thing. Um, I I think eventually this will get resolved to Alex's favor. It take many years yet through whatever's got to happen, and you know, a number of us that were watching this from the legal side didn't think that he had the right advice and legal strategy, but that's certainly a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. And I'm sure that at the time they were doing everything they knew to do. Um, uh, but as far as within the Patriot movement, look, Alex is a bomb thrower,
Yeah.
but he serves an important role. If you don't have people that can go out on a limb on certain stuff and be edgy, look at how a lot of the stuff, a friend of mine was Patrick Byrne was wearing a shirt the other day. I've got to find some new conspiracies. All my old ones have been proven true.
Yeah.
I don't have any more conspiracy anymore. They're all been proven true. I can't. I need some new stuff here. Uh, I think that that's the part of what the deal is now like. And he's had some assistance and backing from quarters that they give good intel. It's accurate stuff. Pretty hard to go back and find much of what Alex trooped out that wasn't pretty accurate. Even if sometimes it was he looked at the sky falling aspect, chicken
Yes.
all over. But it wasn't that the information was wrong or unneeded. We've needed to have people out there. Journalism is so key to a free society, and people bringing out stuff that we then can talk about within the public realm and try to avert or change direction based on that info. If you don't have guys like Alex out there, I actually think it's bad for the health of the nation, because there's a lot of stuff comes out you don't necessarily want to have to talk about, but if you're not talking about it, then it festers and becomes way worse. And so he's like the guy that goes and lances the boil, and now we got to deal with how do we keep it from getting the infection spreading and getting healed up and cleared up. So you may not like Alex for different reasons, too bombastic, too aggressive, yells too much. The reality is he serves a very important purpose, and if you don't like it, you turn the channel. But
Correct.
he gets information into the public discourse, and then other people can come in, moderate it, add, subtract. But he starts conversations a lot of times in places that nobody wants to talk. And then there's anybody that's doing this, there's going to be some stuff where later you find out moderating aspects or the people involved, as more eyes get on it, you know what, that's not actually who we are or who we want to, back
Hmm.
or whatever. But you have to have that conversation a lot of times to get there. And I think that Alex, for that reason, he's paid his dues. He's earned his place, and we will. I'm sure he'll pop up somewhere. I know there's a. Even this morning, I had somebody that got to me that wanted to know if they could step in and cover the expense to, allow him to keep the station or something. And I'll pass that along. I don't know what's possible because I'm not directly involved in it all, but we certainly know plenty of people that have close contacts with Alex, and if there's an angle that they can help him, I'm sure they will.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. And my quick weigh in on Alex, and I got one last question. We'll wrap up this report. Just commenting here on Ritter and Napolitano and the state with Russia is, Alex woke me up way back on the Obama deception, and I think a bit prior to that was well, certainly the Bilderberg Group and some of the other, I forget, Bohemian Grove, yeah. And I followed his work on and off for some years, but it's been a long time since I followed Alex. And controversial as he is, you're absolutely right. He was the trailblazer, and that leads me to my question. Dr. Jan Halper Hayes. First off, you and I had a private discussion when I had a chance to sit down face to face with you a week or so ago here in Asia, and Dr. Halper Hayes of the Department of Defense Task Force spoke about I don't know the right word, a flushing out, a purging, or a cleansing, and a looking at in. So Alex's job is, at least in my opinion, predominantly is behind him. We'll see where he moves forward into. The torch had been passed to a new generation of influencers and podcasters that are out there, and there's a couple of hundred of them, and we see a lot of disinformation. We're wondering who's who. Is there dark money funding some of these voices and so forth? And I think you know what I'm talking about. Can you, and again, Dr. Halper Hayes on the Department of Defense Task Force talked very specifically about, I don't want to use the word coming after, but it's essentially what she was saying, the bad apples in the new influencer space. Can you comment on what you might know, what might come about in the next couple of 3 months at this critical time where our voices need to be silenced if you're the enemy? Also, if you're the white hats and the good guys, we don't want imposters being a voice and causing trouble. Any comments on that before we conclude?
Well, let me finish the Scott Ritter and the Napolitano thing real quick. They will probably be okay. But in fact, they might have been short-stopped from doing something that would have had even greater ramifications or implications, not only against them, but for other people they may have been in communication with. So I'm not really averse. Look, this situation in Ukraine, Russia, has reached height now that, even in the Cold War, we weren't this loose in our discussions, our comments, and it's painful. We won World War III. No nukes were used. The Soviet Union doesn't exist. Russia itself, the Russian people, were freed from a horrible, evil empire, as Reagan described them. And they were on their way to trying to integrate into the West and the free world and trying to sell their oil and gas products. Putin himself had a horrendous war with the intelligence agency operatives who went in after the fall of the wall, after the Soviet Union collapsed, and they plumb-picked all of the industries, all of the good stuff, oil and gas production, things like that, and moved the money to themselves. And so these intelligence operatives that were in the right place became the oligarchs that really became the problem, and Putin had to deal with them. We actually have a similar problem here in the West. All of these quadrillionaires that were created under false pretenses out of primarily DARPA and SES, and they have cornered huge segments of our industry, media, controlling the conversations, and then even into the justice system. So Putin, not perfect. I wouldn't want to live in Russia. I wouldn't want to live under a Soviet system, and when it existed, I wouldn't want to live under the present Russian system. They haven't got it sorted out completely, but at a certain level, they weren't behaving as our enemy. Now we're being prodded, both really literally cattle prodded into some kind of a direct conflict. Look at what preceded what was going on with Ritter and Napolitano. You have the Biden administration directly Zelensky to Ukrainian, the American-made weapons that we provided and paid for. Zelensky didn't pay for them. He didn't have the money. They didn't manufacture them. They were manufactured here in the U.S. and with other countries that we deal with throughout the NATO complex. They're us. We're paying for it. We have to own it. We're paying for the weapons and gave permission for those weapons to be used inside Russian territory against Russian troops, Russian facilities. How long before Putin decides, and he said he will, that he's going to hit over to send a message? You want to take our bridges out? We'll take yours out. See if you can figure out how we did it. That can escalate radically. And by the way, we live in a glass house. I don't know that people have really thought this through. I've heard so many comments, yeah, let's do it, go for it, let's take it on. Russia is not with and they have a pretty good intelligence operation even today. If you're going to let this go, let the Biden crowd, remember, Biden's not running America. Even Putin said that. Biden's not running the, okay? It's people you don't even know the names of. That's what what Putin said. It's people you don't even know the names of. Oh, it's Obama. Well, it's not what Putin thinks. And I guarantee you, Putin has better intelligence gathering assets than anybody in this audience. So Putin says, in his estimation, and remember, belief is the driver of action. I've said that many times. What people believe that's how they formulate what their next moves are going to be. They have a certain belief and they act upon it. Putin believes there is a hidden force behind Biden and camp and Washington, D.C. that's calling the shot. I can tell you that he believes it's being run out of England and the City of London, but and that's why he's threatened London directly, because they're at the base of this whole thing, proxy operation. But America's assets, America's people, our weapons, our money are being used to take on Russia. Well, don't be surprised if they strike back. And Putin's ready to use tactical nukes. He said so. He's been hesitant within that limited area in Ukraine. People are talking about France sending troops in, covert American troops there. CIA had several bases inside of Ukraine, 12, I believe. So don't think for a second that this couldn't escalate into something monstrous. If you have people with their wits, turned on, understanding the magnitude of the threat, such as Ritter and Napolitano, that they're there with several other people representing them, because the danger is become so great, so extreme. It's hard to imagine after having ended the Cold War, ended World War III, that we're so readily and quickly back at the brink of World War IV.
The absence of Donald Trump has something to do with this threat once again. Thanks for
hold on, John. Let me just say one thing. This is a really important point. what you're going to learn, and everybody is going to learn and understand this better over the next many months. The election was stolen in 2020.
Mhm.
The naysayers can say what they will. I'll stand on that. 2020 isn't over yet. But the consequence of a stolen election, where members of the three-letter communities, not just in the US, but outside the country, work together to get players into office, including the presidency of the United States, weak players, so that they could manage and manipulate them. Not strong players, players that were weak so that they could puppeteer them readily. With that in mind, we're on the brink of World War IV because of those people and what they want. They want the West and the United States and Europe in calamity, in chaos, because once the chaos is fully established and then people take each other out and the numbers in the population, actual people, is reduced heavily, they can come in and manipulate at will to reform the world. It's like an article I wrote years ago. You see, Nero, why did Nero fiddle as Rome burned? Because he was behind it. His high priest around him had convinced him that if he burned Rome down, he could rebuild it in his own image. It had all of the imagery, all of the history of the prior Caesars, and he didn't want to be overwritten by them. He wanted to overwrite them himself, and so by erasing them, he could rebuild it his way and his image to do things that he wanted to do. And he blamed the Christians for the fire. He started the fire, but he blamed the Christians to make them the bad guy and to divide the people against each other. So now you look at what's going on here in the West and around the world, it's very similar. This oligarch, the Davos crowd, if you will, World Economic Forum, and similar, all of these secret handshake organizations want to burn the world down and then reform it according to their vision for the world. And they don't mind if they have to crack a few eggs along the way and a few billion people get killed along the way, because that's their vision, and reform it in their way of looking at it. By the way, not in a godly manner. That's their perspective. They want to do it in a humanist version. So that is the fight we're in. That's what's on the line. And that's why Trump and the people around him are such a threat, because they will fight that all the way. And by the way, lastly, John, the delay, would public understand, would people be coming out of the woodwork across the world, just like it was going on in England this yesterday, supporting Trump coming back and telling Americans to get it right in the election? If you didn't have this last 3.5 years plus the Obama years to fully see how these people would govern once they got in office, you wouldn't have consensus out amongst the people. The disasters that are going on right now, it kind of had to be allowed to happen so you could see, and then people get it in their gut so that they won't let this happen again anytime soon. It's a wake up moment for America and the world, and you'll see what they want to do. They want to burn the world down. We're going to get the foam and the fire suppression out and stop this last minute, including with Trump coming back. And it's not just, by the way, Trump only. It's Trump and the people who invited Trump to run in the first. Okay, remember, there has been a contingent that's been there all along, trying to get in the right position to be able to do this fight correctly with all of the assets in play. And they are the ones that invited Trump to run. And this is a far larger operation than most people can even imagine.
Juan, as you're going through a bit of that, I'm hearing I mean, seeing Billy Joel sit down and add a few more lyrics to "We Didn't Start the Fire"
Yeah.
for the events that are occurring today. If I had a producer behind me, I'd run a little clip of that, but I don't have that capability here at this time. Juan, in closing here, do you care to comment if you have an opinion about what's on my mind from the information I've been getting and looking at, and some of us have been hearing out there, is you look at the independent influencers and podcasters and newly formed new news networks and digital soldiers in this sort of space, the same space I'm in, if you will. You from one side, we have the enemy, if you will, that would love to silence all of us. And then, of course, you have the report from Jan Halper Hayes saying that even us on the good guys are looking at who's who in this movement because they're causing some trouble. You and I, yes, you and I did an entire show discussing someone who's specifically attacking General Flynn. I don't want to get into all that right now. My question to you is, do you have any opinions about a shakeup in this influencer podcaster, new news, digital soldier community, good or bad, that may be coming down the pike?
Well, over the years, and I mean, I've got more than most in this zone for comparative purposes. It goes through streak, and it does get reoriented. I remember back during Whitewater in Arkansas, and what was amazing, some of the money crowd that we were dealing with, that the largest off Wall Street brokerage firm in the world was based out of Little Rock, Arkansas, Robertson Investment. And so you think of, where would be the big brokerage firms? Is it Chicago, London, etc. No, it was Little Rock, Arkansas. After Wall Street, it was crazy. Why was that? Because that was, where they were running the black ops money through at the time, the drug stuff and other things. And that was really what ADFA, Arkansas Development Finance Authority, was about, and 11 other ones around the country. With that said, they had purchased up and began purchasing all the radio broadcasters that were conservative broadcast groups, and then turning them into pop rock or classic rock stations, etc., and shutting off all of the hosts who were conservative hosts, and shutting it down. That really did have an impact on the national conversation. We would come up with new technology, internet, and podcasts and things like that, and then it would get shut down a different way. It's whack-a-mole. And the other thing that happened was that the hosts that were able to be innovative enough to move with the technology and the conversation, they stuck around, or new ones came in. I remember when we I had a bunch of influencers out to Vegas for the Sound of Freedom movie, and hosted them there at a theater location. And then that day, I was commenting, talking with everybody that was there. All this, hosts from across the internet that flew in. I gave them 3 days notice, and then
I
everybody showed up.
I remember the 3 days notice.
Nobody knew about it. It was a flash thing, and then we had literally, well over 1,000 hosts, people that came in. It was very fun. But Rush died that afternoon. And I commented to those present that it was like handing a baton. And this was the crowd, this was the people that were going to be holding the torch, passing the baton forward for having conversations out into the community. And you can imagine, John, that we had a very, very all across the board group of people there, all sorts of different insights, interests. Some are more concerned about money, others about the taxes, others about the aliens. But we had common ground in being concerned about child trafficking, and then the beautiful movie Sound of Freedom that Jim Caviezel starred in. And I believe that it was as a result of all of those influencers that were present there that day that had the conversation for a very long time about the child trafficking, about the movie, that the movie was such a success. It wasn't so much the later advertising that happened, it was the percolating in the community. It was this community anticipating the release of that movie when it finally came out that gave it such a tremendous, everybody showing up at the theaters because everybody had a chance to talk about what they'd seen, and it was it was a well done movie. In this next phase, I think we're about to do something similar. It's about to go through another change, gyration, morphing. That was about a little over 3 years ago that happened. But events are accelerating, and the people that were in the right place and relevant and understood things at that time, their knowledge, a significant number of them now have been weeded out and fallen to the side for whatever reason. The ones that survive, good on them. But I think that we're about to see another morphing, and the survivors through this next phase. And I've mentioned this to a number of the broadcasters privately behind the scenes. Probably is only going to be a very small sliver of what was there before. Think of all the hosts that you would listen to 5, 6, 8 years ago, and how many of them are still around. Some of them have timed out. My friend Gary Bell passed away, super guy. Art Bell, of course, gone from a couple decades back. Rush. A lot of those hosts, for various reasons, aren't there available to us anymore. But new ones are going to come in and fill that gap, and that's exactly what we want. And they're going to do amazing jobs. They're going to be more current. They're going to be more relevant because they have knowledge and have been doing the research in this current flip, this next phase. We're not going to fight the last battle. We're going to fight the next battle. To the extent that you're trying to fight the last battle and talk about stuff that is from 10 or 12 years ago without, other than just reference, you're probably not going to be relevant. It's going to move so fast, and the urgency of the information is going to be so great. So I expect probably real number, less than 20% of the hosts that maybe have been prominent over the last 3, 4 years to make it through this next phase. And then we'll get the best of the best that stick through, and a bunch of new ones that'll be, amazing moving forward.
Well, excellent. We certainly need it. And, Juan, yeah, I don't expect you to remember. That was the first time I met you face to face. We had met prior to only on interviews a couple of years beforehand. I was at that event in Vegas and saw the screening of Caviezel's film, and it moved that room incredibly. And I hear exactly what you're saying, as I know some of these folks. And thanks for having invited me there. But listen, Juan, I got to wrap this up. Great insights as usual. And this is kind of good news. We have a major shift taking place in new news. When the news becomes the news and the news becomes the truth, we're heading in the right direction. Thanks for weighing in, Juan, on Ritter and Napolitano and the grave circumstance surrounding the interference and things that are drumming up with Russia right now. And thank you. Please drive very safely there. I'm going to sign us off here. Folks, don't forget, Juan and I will be on every Thursday. We will discuss in the next broadcast the election interference and the Trump convictions, jail or presidency. So be informed, folks. Stay safe. Any closing comments, Juan, before I bid our audience good night?
You know, life goes on, and some things are going to get pruned back, but that just directs the growth to the places that remain. And so if we have a pruning process right now, that's not a negative thing. Everybody that has a garden, everybody that does commercial work with plants and orchards and things like that, that is a necessary part of the operation. And when it's done properly, it's amazing because you get growth, even greater growth. You're sending the nutrients to places that are doing the most good and being fruitful, and not to places just leafing out but not actually producing any great growth, or where you can't reach it. So it's part of the process. It's a positive thing. Let's not fight it. Let's work with it.
Great perspective. Thank you very much. Careful driving, Juan. God be with you, Juan. God be with you listening to and watching this broadcast. Stay safe, everyone. We'll see you next time.